I always thought my stepmother was the last person I could ever open up to, until the day she caught me watching something I shouldn't have. But instead of getting angry or awkward, she did something I never expected. Something that changed everything. Hi, I'm Ethan. I'm 23. That day, I was sure I locked my door. I swear I did. But somehow, it had stayed just slightly ajar, letting in the faintest light from the hallway. And that light? It burned. The day itself had been boring. The sky outside was gray, classes got canceled, my dad was off at work, and Rachel, my stepmom, was somewhere cleaning the house. I wasn't in the mood to do anything productive. My thoughts were foggy, my body restless. I opened my laptop, went online, and without even thinking, like muscle memory, I clicked on something I knew I shouldn't. A video. Something private. Taboo. No one ever really taught me how to understand these things. Just clumsy health classes, half-laughed stories from friends, and vague warnings from my dad. Curiosity mixed with guilt had been my quiet companion growing up, especially when my thoughts wandered where they shouldn't. I put on my headphones, volume low. My heart beat like I was stealing something from myself. Then, I felt it. A faint breath of air. I turned. Rachel stood there. My body froze. My brain went blank. There were no yells, no scolding, not even the shameful glare I'd always imagined would come if anyone ever caught me. Just her eyes. Wide. Surprised. But not harsh. I yanked off my headphones, paralyzed. "Mom," I mumbled. My face burned. I waited. For a scream, for anger, something. But Rachel just stood there for a second longer before saying gently, "Turn it off. Can you come to the living room? I want to talk." I nodded. My stomach churned with humiliation. I sat on the couch like a little kid waiting to be punished, my head down. I couldn't even look at her. Rachel took a seat across from me, placing a warm cup of tea on the table. That simple sound made my skin crawl with embarrassment. A minute passed, then another. "Do you know why I'm not angry?" Rachel asked softly. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. I shook my head, still staring at my hands. "Because you didn't do anything wrong. But I don't think you understand what you're looking for." I swallowed. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to say something. But the only words that escaped were, "I know it was dirty." Rachel frowned, leaning forward. "No, Ethan. Your feelings aren't dirty. What's hurting you is how you interpret them." I finally looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't see judgment. I saw honesty, deep and raw. "I was your age once," she said, slow and steady. "I used to wonder why I felt things, why my body reacted. I hid books under my bed. I thought I was wrong just for feeling something when I saw someone a certain way." I chuckled. It came out broken, like disbelief and shame tangled together. "I used to," I started, but I couldn't finish. "Yes," Rachel said, nodding. "We all did. But no one teaches us. And that's the real danger." Something in me cracked. My chest felt heavy, my eyes burned. I didn't know why, but the tears just started building. I turned away, trying to hold it in. Then, like an idiot, I said the one thing I shouldn't have. I once peeked at you in the bathroom," I blurted out. "Just once. I don't know why." Silence. My breath stopped. had destroyed everything. Humiliation consumed me. Every tick of the clock was a hammer driving the shame deeper into my spine. I expected her to shout, to call my dad, to push me away forever. But she just let out a breath. Real, quiet, human. Then she said something that stunned me. "You're not a monster, Ethan." I looked up slowly. Had I heard that right? Curiosity is normal, but you have to learn to control it, not let it control you. I didn't breathe. Did she mean it? She wasn't afraid of me? Rachel leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. Her gaze drifted, distant, like she wasn't just talking to me anymore. "You think I didn't know someone was standing outside the bathroom door?" She chuckled. "I just didn't think that person would be brave enough to confess." I blushed. My throat tightened. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I'm really sorry. I'm not that kind of person. I was so confused." Rachel nodded. "I believe you just 3 words, but those 3 words broke down a wall that had been building in my heart for years. But you need to change. Not for me, for yourself. Exercise, read books, talk to real people, not screens. And if you have any more questions, I'll always be here." I burst into tears, not because I'd been caught, not because I was embarrassed, because for the first time I felt like someone believed I could be better than I was. Yesterday, that night, I went back to my room and closed my laptop as if I were closing an old chapter. I opened my desk drawer and took out an old notebook that I had never written on the first page. I wrote a sentence. "Sometimes growth doesn't come from knowing more. It comes from facing up to what you did wrong. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. But I do know today that door is only ajar, and someone has used it not to walk out, but to walk in." I didn't speak to Rachel the next day. Not out of anger, not out of fear, but because I didn't know what to say. How do you face someone who's just confessed the worst to you and still chooses to sit next to you? I spent the morning sitting at my desk, but my mind was drifting back to the night before, to the look in my stepmother's eyes when I said I used to peek at you, to the silence that followed, to the "I trust you," which I still wasn't sure I deserved. I picked up my phone, opened Instagram out of habit, and then I saw it. A video title caught by Mom, and what she did next will shock you there. I was in my old pajamas, sitting under a dim yellow light, my face flushed, crying, and Rachel's voice small but clear. "I'm not mad at you." The clip lasted less than a minute, but the comment section was exploding. "What the hell? What kind of stepmother is this? This is why Mills are so popular? That's not right. It sounds like a porno. Sorry, kid. But who filmed this?" I pulled out my headphones. My hands were shaking. I felt naked in public. But what hurt more was, I didn't know who did it, who had captured a vulnerable, private, honest moment of mine and turned it into a public spectacle during my lunch break at school. I saw Tyler, my classmate in my media skills class, looking at me with a look that was half apologetic, half conquering. He smirked as if he had won a bet. "You went viral," he said, his tone half teasing, half warning. "No need to thank me. The clip has been viewed nearly 100,000 times." I stepped forward and growled, "You secretly filmed me." Tyler shrugged nonchalantly. "The window was open. You cried. You talked loudly. I just recorded the truth. The truth I wanted to punch him, but my whole body was as stiff as stone. I'm not a person who cries often, but at that moment, I just wanted to disappear. I didn't go home right away that afternoon. I sat alone on a park bench. Strangers' conversations passed by my ears like the wind, leaving nothing but an invisible numbness. I began to think about deleting my social media accounts, changing schools, getting the hell out of here. But another part of me, the part that was trembling with shame, was also quietly resentful. Why was it shameful for a son to cry over being forgiven? And more importantly, what would I say to my mother? I got home late that night. The door was open. The light in the kitchen was on. Rachel was washing dishes, her hair tied back and her old sweater covered in soap suds. Everything looked brutally normal. I wanted to go straight to my room, pretend I was tired and didn't want to talk, but my legs wouldn't listen, Mom, I said softly. Rachel stopped, dried herself, and turned around. How are you? She asked, her voice as soft as ever. But this time, with a thin layer of worry, I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. She didn't say anything as she watched, but her eyes began to change from surprise to pity, then finally silence. Who filmed this? She asked Tyler. I answered, my voice curt. And do you know? I nodded. Rachel closed her eyes. It was only a second. But in that silence, I saw her as a statue being blown aside by the wind he called Mom. This afternoon, she said. He's not happy, I knew better. David, my father, was not just not happy. He was the type of person who could not tolerate ambiguity. Once he sensed something was indecent, he would immediately frame it as the truth. Black or white, wrong or right. There were no gray areas. The next day, I was called into the principal's office. A woman with glasses half down her nose, her eyes both polite and cold. Ethan, due to the images circulating online and the complaints from other parents, we have had to ask you to temporarily leave school to undergo a mental health assessment. I sat there motionless. What? I asked again, not believing my ears. This is not my fault. I was secretly filmed, I understand. But we need to do it right. Avoid risk to you and the student community. Community, I wanted to scream. I am part of that community. Not a threat, but I said nothing. I just stood up, opened the door, and walked out. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at a childhood photo on the wall. Me at age 6, grinning from ear to ear on my father's shoulder. My name was Ethan, then just Ethan, a boy who loved soccer and hated math. I sat behind the wheel, parked in front of the house for 5 minutes, not daring to enter. Never before had I felt like my own home was a place I wanted to run away from. The phone screen lit up a text from Dad, just 2 words. Come home. I opened the door, walked in, and found Dad sitting at the kitchen table. Rachel stood near the stove, clutching a dish towel, as if she were holding on to something to keep from shaking. Sit down, Ethan. Dad's voice was sharp as a knife. I did, trying to keep my legs from shaking. Do you know what your mother got us into? I stopped. Your mother? He never called Rachel Mom when he spoke to me. It's not your fault, I said. You let it happen and she encouraged it. He hissed through gritted teeth. She let me say those sick things without reacting. Rachel looked up. Her eyes were sparkling, but her lips were still pressed together. David? I don't let anything happen. I listen to your son because he needs it. He needs discipline, not understanding. He needs boundaries, not empathy. Dad looked at me as if I were living proof of the failure of modern parenting. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my composure. What do you want? I asked, my voice. You want me to apologize? You want me to say I'm sick and Mom is a sinner? I can't do that, I shouted. Then Dad stood up, grabbed his keys, and before he walked out the door, he said, I'll be back when she's out of this house. The door slammed shut like a sentence. Rachel leaned against the kitchen counter. Her entire body drained of strength. I moved closer, intending to say something, but she looked up, her eyes still wet. It's okay, Ethan. I'm fine. Then she quietly turned away like someone who had just been rejected by a loved one. I thought I was fine until I stepped into the schoolyard the next day. Everything looked the same. Flags, fluttering, scattered laughter, groups of students huddled together to discuss upcoming exams. But I knew nothing was the same. A group of students passed me. No one said anything, but I could feel their eyes. The kind of look that only needed half a second to make me feel like I was the subject. Tyler stood near the vending machine, pretending not to notice, but the corners of his mouth curled up smug. It was then that I realized I was no longer being looked at with normal eyes. My name was now associated with the keyword scandal, and no one cared what the real story was. At noon, I received an email from the Student Affairs Office. You are invited to a meeting to discuss your academic status and future plans. When I got home, I found Rachel folding laundry. There was something different about the way she did it. Slower, more determined. "What are you doing?" "I'm moving to a friend's house for a few days." I paused. "You don't have to do that. I can handle it. I can explain to Dad to the school." Rachel looked up. "No, Ethan, I'm not leaving because I'm scared. It's because if I stay, everyone will keep looking at you. I'm leaving so you can breathe." I didn't know what to say. I felt angry and grateful and guilty. It all swirled together like a storm in my chest. Rachel came closer, putting her hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to fight the world. Just don't give up on yourself." And she left the house with only a small suitcase. The sound of the door closing wasn't a sentence. This time it was like a shield retreating, allowing me to stand on my own for the first time. 3 days after Rachel left home, I received a strange email from a faculty member at the school, Ethan. "I read your article, although we don't say it. Many of us support you don't let them silence you." I read it over and over, as if afraid it would disappear. For the first time in a long time, I felt not completely alone. That same morning, another email arrived from the Office of Academic Crisis Management. "We understand that your mother, Rachel Miller, wishes to address the board directly. The meeting will be tomorrow afternoon. You are welcome to attend." I don't know how Rachel arranged the meeting, but I know one thing for sure. She is not choosing to be silent. College closed meeting room the next afternoon. At college closed meeting room, I sat at the end of a long table wearing a formal shirt as if for a job interview, my palm. Sweaty in front of her sat 3 superintendent, a school attorney, and a parent representative. The door opened. Rachel walked in calm, neat, but her eyes were razor sharp. No one rushed to speak. Finally, a gray-haired man coughed and said, "Mrs. Rachel, you requested this hearing, please." Rachel did not open her notebook. She did not hold a piece of paper. She stood straight, her hands clasped together. "I am not here to protect my son from consequences. I am here to ask you, when did compassion become a worthy act?" Everyone was silent. She continued, her voice as steady as steel. "My son confessed his mistake. I did not avoid it, nor did I condone it. I chose to sit down, talk to him, and guide him as a mother should. And what did you do? Suspension, psychological testing, turning a teaching moment into a social scandal. Not because of the behavior, because you can't stand the ambiguity," the director interrupted. "Excuse me, but we have to protect the school's image. Rachel laughed, but not happily. "If the school is afraid of others, seeing your students cry because they've been forgiven, then what you're protecting isn't education, it's empty reputation." There was a heavy silence. I looked at her, my stepmother, who had been abandoned by her husband for not keeping her distance from her stepson, now standing in the middle of a room full of powerful people and not bowing. I've never seen anyone so brave at the end of the meeting. No one came to a conclusion. They said they would study further and review internal communications policy, but I knew the battle had begun, and Rachel was the one who threw the rock that broke the surface of the pond. That night I wrote a status, "My stepmom is not a good cook." She often forgets the names of my favorite movies, but today she taught me a lesson that no one else in this school dares to teach. Some truths need to be shouted, not asked for permission. My post got a few dozen likes. The first night, a few positive comments, mostly from anonymous accounts. But on the second day, a former teacher shared, "I used to teach Ethan. He was one of the best listeners I've ever met. Read this story." And then it all exploded. The post went viral. Education sharing sites picked it up. A few TikTok channels turned it into videos. I found myself floating around the internet, not as a sensationalist this time, but as a real person. And in that storm, there was a message that made me cry. I'm a single mom. I used to yell at my son when I saw him watching porn. But because of Ethan's story, I sat him down and asked him, "What did you want to ask that no one taught you?" "Thank you, I don't need the whole world to support me, but I need people like her." That night I went live, not to tell the story, but to say something I had never had the chance to say. I'm not telling this to get forgiveness. I don't want pity. I want adults, parents, teachers to stop using shame as punishment. Shame only silences us, and in that darkness, confusion grows. Toward the end of the live, a comment came from an account I knew very well. David Miller, 1959. Sometimes I don't know what to say either. I stared at the words. My eyes stung. The next day, the school newspaper published an official article. Disciplinary board reconsiders case of student Ethan Miller. The article didn't apologize, but it was a tactical retreat and a moral victory. A few professors began to speak out publicly in favor of comprehensive sex education. A parents' association requested a panel discussion on boundaries and awareness. In the modern family, the talk was held in the main auditorium of the school. The seats were packed. There were teachers, parents, students, and a few strangers from the community. The lights were on. The microphones were set. The cameras were on. I stepped forward. No paper, no slide. I had only one thing with me in my heart. Hello, I'm Ethan Miller. You may know me from a viral video or a piece of writing. But I'm not here to explain. I'm here because I need to say something I was never taught to say. I took a deep breath. I thought that if I confessed my wrongdoings, I would be punished. But what hurt me the most wasn't that my wrongdoings were exposed. It was that no one told me I could still be heard. A few people began nodding. I continued. The only person who didn't abandon me was my stepmother. Rachel didn't scream. She didn't punish. She sat down, listened, and taught me about choices. She taught me that emotions aren't the enemy. They're signals, and that mistakes don't define you. Your response to them is. I stopped, looked toward the back of the room, and I saw him. David standing alone, leaning against the wall, not taking his eyes off me. My father was angry, very angry, but I didn't hate him. I knew he was scared. My voice began to shake, afraid of failing as a father, afraid that my son would turn into something he couldn't understand. And now I'm a man too, and I'm scared, but I don't want to use fear to keep me quiet. I want to use it to connect. Applause, not loud, but real. The applause seemed to hit me from all sides. I bowed my head in thanks and left the stage. When I got to the lobby, David was there waiting. He didn't say anything. He just opened his arms. I walked over and hugged him for the first time in years, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. David whispered, Dad is not a good listener. But today, he tried that night. Rachel texted, Mom watched the live stream. I'm proud. But Ethan, you don't have to be strong every day when you're tired. Just be tired. I replied, Thanks, Mom. I'm grateful you didn't leave that day. I ended my diary entry that day with this: turns out sometimes what we need most isn't someone with answers. It's someone who doesn't run away. When we ask questions, I am not a hero. I did not overcome everything because I am strong. I overcome it because I had no choice but to be true to myself. I used to think that mistakes were what would drown me, but it turns out it is how I deal with mistakes that defines who I become. I used to stay silent because I was afraid of losing respect, but now I speak out so I don't lose myself. If you are keeping a secret, a fear, or a feeling that makes you feel different, know that you are not alone. Don't let others tell your story the way they want. Tell it even if your voice is shaky, even if your tears are still wet. Because once you speak up, you will not only save yourself, you will become a voice in the darkness for those who are still afraid. Thank you for listening to my story. I appreciate you staying until the